This is my 2005 This is my 2005 Aston Martin DB9. I'm currently in the process of taking this engine out and putting this engine in. I'm Gary Brown, and this is GB9 Garage. Okay, so last week we were able to get a lot of the stuff out of the front. So basically the front bumper, all the air boxes, and everything that's basically front of the axles is out of the way now. So this week, let's see what else we can get done. Okay, so the next step that I've got to get done here is I have got to remove the heater coolant pipes. So you can see up in there, right up in there, there's the heater coolant pipe there, and then there's another one right next to it. They're gonna be a bit of a pain in the butt to get to. They've got a hose clamp on there, and then I gotta pull the hose off. But I think I have a solution. So to get that hose clamp off and pull those hoses off, got a hose clamp removal tool. So it allows you to get this up there on that hose clamp, clamp it closed, and then it'll stay closed. So then you can get your hand up in there and pull the hose clamp off, and then hopefully these guys to push them off the fitting that's on the firewall. So let's give it a try. Okay, let's give this a shot. All right, I sped this up because there's no sense in dragging this out for anybody to watch, but I spent a lot of time trying to get this thing to get hooked on. And then when I finally did get it hooked on, I still couldn't get the hose off of the adapter that goes into the firewall. So I tried from above, I tried from below, I pulled on it as hard as I could. But then I did a little more investigating, and it looks to me like the hoses are long enough to where the engine's going to drop out of the engine bay enough to where it'll give me some room, and then I should be able to reach behind there and pull it out once the engine starts to lower. So that's what I'm going to try to do. Just doing it this way just wasn't going to work, and I don't know. My other option is just cut it, so we'll see. Okay, well, we're not going to call that a fail. We're going to put that off until later. So I can get the little hose clamp tool onto the hose clamp, but then getting it off the hose or moving it on the hose is, almost impossible. So what I've done is I'm looking at the new engine and where those hoses come around the block and into the firewall. There's one that comes from the back of the block, and then there's one that comes from the front. The one that comes from the front wraps around, but there's a lot of play in there. And then the one that comes from the back, there's a lot of play for sure. So what I'm thinking is that once I start to lower the motor, or I should say raise the car off the motor, then I'll have better access to be able to pull those away. That's my hope. Worst case scenario, I'll cut the hoses and we'll get new ones. Probably not a bad idea anyway, considering this thing's got 100,000 miles on it. So we're gonna move on to the next step because this one right now is just stumping me for too long. Okay, so now we're gonna be disconnecting the brake lines from both sides. There's the modulators right here, has all the different lines in it. And so we're just gonna take off the one for the left front on this side. So my assumption is that this whole front section comes down with everything. So we're only taking this one front, left front one off up here. And then on the other side, we'll take it off from the frame. So I'm guessing we're gonna leak a little brake fluid here. So I'm hoping that I have the catch bin in the right spot to prevent too much spillage all over the garage. The interesting thing is these are hard lines, and so even if this comes down, I'm gonna have to try to feed it around the brake modulator as it comes down, but yeah, that's the plan. So it goes. I wanted to take a real quick minute to go ahead and thank the sponsor of this video. Who am I kidding? I don't have any sponsors yet, but if you wanted to be a sponsor, this would be a great opportunity for you to get involved, and this is where your video would go. So think about that. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe. All right, so now we just need to get this side's brake line off. And then try not to spill too much brake fluid here. Okay, so now we're removing the intermediate steering shaft. So I've already removed the steering connection to the steering wheel up inside the cabin. So now we're taking basically the shaft then from there down here to the steering box off. And yeah, it's not easy to get to, but it's not the worst. It's better than the freaking hose clamp for the heater.
All right, let's try this now with a different tool. See if this helps.
So I'm going to try to get this off, and I sped it up again because it just takes me a minute to get this bolt off. It's not that big of a deal, but anyway, just spin this off, and then it was kind of tight still, so I was trying to figure out what the heck was going on, but the bolt wasn't tight as much as it just wasn't coming off the shaft. So then I just turned the camera off, but I grabbed the shaft, came loose, and then I was able to get it out. All right, well, I took a little convincing, but I think it's popped off now, so. Steering shaft. All right, the next step was to get these fuel lines disconnected. It looks like they're pretty simple to do. It looks like a button, you just pull the hose out. I'm just hoping that I don't get fuel everywhere, so let's see how it goes. All right, well, here goes one. Well, a little bit of fuel, but not crazy amounts. Oh, there we go. Spoke a little too soon. I might as well get the other one while we're in here. There we go. All right. Fuel line's disconnected. And we're gonna get some fuel coming out. Hopefully this doesn't go on for very long. It doesn't look like it's gonna. Okay, so I gotta get this vacuum line off and then deal with these fuel lines. Probably gonna end up having to go get a piece of hose and a little bolt or something to put in there and then put on the fuel lines so they stop dripping, because right now I don't know if it's ever gonna stop. That's how my fuel tank runs dry, which seems like a kind of not a good thing to do. So this vacuum line thing, it's just a little push clip. It shouldn't be that hard once I get my hand on it. But getting your hand on it, it's not so easy. Of course, so far what has been getting my hands on easy? It's like everything here is tucked away. Definitely not easy access to anything. All right, boom. Disconnect. Probably should make sure I don't get gas in my eye. Hey, I'm on to a step finally where I can actually just easily get to this thing and I can undo it. So it's just the torque tube ground to the chassis. Easy enough. I know this probably doesn't have to be recorded, but I was just so excited that it's actually going to be fairly easy to get off. Compared to everything else we've been doing, this step was an easy one. Okay, moving on. So that ground lead that I was so excited to be able to take off was not the torque tube ground lead. That was actually the engine starter ground lead. The torque tube ground lead took me a second to find it, but it's right up in here. Right up where all the fuel lines are, dripping fuel in my face. So hopefully we can do this without taking too much fuel to the face. It's no big deal again, it's just a ground lead, so it shouldn't be all that tight or hard to get off. I shouldn't say things like that. Brake fluid dripping has slowed way down, but there's still a bit of fuel dripping out. So, okay, it's off. All right. So now we need to disconnect the emergency brake cable from the emergency brake caliper. So it's gonna be that crazy to pull on this thing, and then maybe just pull that cable off. Yeah, that was easy enough. It says that there's some special tool to get the rest of this stuff off of all these pieces here, so we'll give it a shot without it because I don't have that tool. So I'm really bummed out here. I recorded this in time lapse instead of regular video, and I was explaining how this was work. So you basically have to have a tool that surrounds this entire clamp-in piece, and it squeezes it all in so you can pull it out the bottom. I don't have that tool, so I used a zip tie to squeeze it all the way around, and then I pulled it out the bottom, and it worked perfectly. So no tool needed. All right, and then we got to remove the rear wiring harness from here. There we go. Boom. All right, wiring harness disconnected. Okay, so I'm basically on the last step. I actually saved this for the last step. This was about 3 or 4 steps earlier. I should have done this, at least according to the instructions. But it's to remove these rear brake lines. I removed the front brake lines already, and of course, brake fluid, dripping everywhere forever. It finally stopped, so I was able to move the tubs, but I didn't want to have brake fluid dripping everywhere while I was still working over here. So anyway, all I have to do is remove these brake lines from the rear of the car, and then the brackets, and then the next thing we're doing is putting this thing down on some kind of rack, set the whole drivetrain down on. So I don't have, of course, the multi-purpose trolley that Aston Martin calls out. So I will probably either build something, or a buddy of mine has a metal rack thing that he said I could use. I don't know if it's going to work or not. I might have to modify it. He said that's fine because it might be too tall. Okay, so anyway, so yeah, because it might be too tall. I have to be able to set the engine down on it, unbolt the engine, and then I have to be able to raise the car high enough to clear the engine while it's on that rack. And I think I might have one more click in the stops higher than this, but this is almost as high as I can go. So I can't have that rack be very tall, so I'm going to do some crawling around on the ground when we get there. But anyway, all I got to do is take this bracket out, or at least disconnect the bracket from the frame. And there you go. I think we're ready to get this thing out. Well, I think today was a good day. I got every step done all the way up to putting the trolley, they call it, the engine trolley, underneath the car and setting the car down on that trolley. I don't have that trolley. I'm gonna have to either build one or, like I said, borrow one from my friend that has something that maybe I can make work. So that's kind of my plan right now. But otherwise, we've got this car ready to drop that engine out the bottom. The only thing that we didn't get done today was those heater lines underneath to the firewall. And I'm just, like I said, hopeful that I can get those off once the engine starts to come down. I think that's what's going to work. So we're going to go with that. Worst case scenario, I'll cut them and get new hoses because they were really giving me a tough time coming off. But otherwise, we got all the steps done and we're ready to move on. So if you're enjoying the project and you want to keep an eye on the progress and see how things come along, please like and subscribe to the video. And thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.